The song revived more than a decade later by James Taylor. The music of Motown will continue in upcoming chapters of the history of rock and roll, but for now we're turning to two supergroups of the 1960s. The first was a quartet from Newark, New Jersey, which many call the greatest American group of the decade. The original members were Nick Massey, Tommy DeVito, Bob Gaudio, and Frank Castelluccio. We knew him better by another name.
Hi, this is Frankie Valli. The Four Seasons story is coming up next on the history of rock and roll.
The history of rock and roll continues with Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons. Sherry from the Four Seasons, a song composed 15 minutes before recording by a founding season Bob Gaudio. We asked Bob what made Sherry a hit.
The only thing I could think of that might be obvious is the fact that the sound of the record, I think it was a fresh-sounding record, vocal harmony, and Frankie's voice and the falsetto, and the whole thing was just a great marriage between song, production, and voice. And when Sherry came about, it was specifically tailored for Frankie, with him in mind. He had done a few things while we were working some lounges, a couple of falsetto songs, and I found them very, very interesting. So I kind of tailored things around his voice, and the harmony was kind of the cushion because his voice was so high. Things had to be surrounding it in order to make it really sound effective, and the harmony just came from that, voicing it around Frankie.
Like most of the Four Seasons super hits, Walk Like a Man was composed by Bob Gaudio, along with the season's producer, Bob Crew. Lead singer Frankie Valli recalls how the three teamed up.
Well, Bob Crew I knew when he was an artist, and I had started out very early in this business, recording. And we crossed paths along the way so many times. While he was out promoting a record that he had recorded, or I was out promoting a record I had recorded. Bob Gaudio used to be a part of the Royal Teens, and Bob Gaudio and I met in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and we had a long conversation. 6 months later, we created a working situation with each other.
I've been a searching on this big wide world.
Candy Girl, the third Four Seasons hit of 1963. Bob Gaudio recalls how their group name came about.
We had an audition at a bowling alley cocktail lounge somewhere in New Jersey, and the name of the place was called Four Seasons. And we didn't wind up with the job, but we took the name.
In 1964, the Four Seasons switched labels from VJ to Phillips and earned a million seller with their very first single, Frankie Valli.
The contention was that Dawn was a hit song. That was the first record we had released after leaving VJ. Everybody feeling very strong about the fact that it was a hit. And fortunately for us, it was a hit.
Next, the Four Seasons Dawn, when the history of rock and roll continues. The history of rock and roll continues with the Four Seasons.
Pretty as a midsummer's morn, they call her Dawn.
4 months after Dawn, the Four Seasons hit number one for the fourth time. Bob Gaudio remembers.
I don't know if you're familiar with New York, but on the West Side Highway going down to New York, when you get off there, go to 10th or 11th Avenue, there's a very long traffic light. I mean, it must be 2 minutes or so. And I don't know if they do it anymore, but the kids would come up and start cleaning off your car windows, and you'd give them a quarter, you know, while you're waiting for the light to change. And this one particular day, I'd gone in, and a little tiny girl came up to the window, was cleaning off the car, and she looked like what the song says. She looked just like Ragdoll. I mean, she was just dirty and torn clothes, and I didn't have any change at all. And I just looked in my pocket, and the smallest thing I had was a $5 bill. And I just could not give her anything. So I gave her a $5 bill, and the look on the girls. I mean, she didn't even say thank you. She just looked at me as I pulled away when the light changed, and that stayed with me for months after, and that's what inspired the song.
Ragdoll by the Four Seasons. Once again, Frankie Valli.
I can't tell you too much about Ragdoll, except that I think it was the fastest rising record we ever had. I mean, from nothing to number one in no time at all, selling about 3 or 4 million records in a period of time where 3 or 4 million records was astronomical, and also generating the kind of excitement to make it a worldwide hit.
Ragdoll is considered by many to be the Four Seasons masterpiece, a teenage classic inspired by Phil Spector. It spawned a Four Seasons sound-alike girl group, the Ragdolls, one of countless imitation acts which included Randy and the Rainbows and the Happenings. In 1965, the Four Seasons moved on to a punchy, brassy masterwork, Frankie Valli.
Let's Hang On, written by Sandy Linzer and Denny Randall, two incredibly bright writers. Came in a dry period. We were looking for something fresh. And Let's Hang On was a very fresh, new approach.
There ain't no good in our goodbye.
1 year after Let's Hang On, Frankie Valli took an important step, the beginning of a solo career.
One of my early dreams was that I would be able to expand myself and extend beyond what the Four Seasons were. We waited until the Four Seasons had the big success so we wouldn't hurt anything. And the other thing we were very careful about was the fact that I wasn't leaving the group. It was just something else that I wanted to do besides being a part of the Four Seasons. I called Bob Crew up, and Gaudio was at his penthouse in New York. And I got into a double conversation with both of them and said, hey, I want you to write me a hit song. I want the greatest song you've ever written. And they wrote Can't Take My Eyes Off You, and in a day, man, it blew me away.
Trust in me when I say, oh, pretty baby, don't bring me down on the ground, pretty baby. Now that I found you, stay, oh, pretty baby.
Things cooled off for Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons in the early 70s, but in 1975, they started a whole new string of million sellers, including Who Loves You, My Eyes Adored You, and Oh, What a Night. The Four Seasons were the last surviving heirs of the New York doo-wop sound, and they were as fiercely supported in the East as their chief rivals were out West. The records Sherry and Surfin' Safari both hit in the same month, August of 1962. And for the rest of the decade, the two bands battled it out on the charts to a virtual standoff. Next, the Four Seasons California rivals, as the history of rock and roll looks at the Beach Boys.